is a law that has sparked fear among many migrants in the United States. On July 1st, the new immigration law of the state of Florida, the toughest on undocumented immigrants in the United States, came into effect. It includes hefty fines and can even lead to sentences of 15 years in prison. The regulation was promoted by the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who aims to become president in the 2024 elections. Mexico considers these measures to be inspired by xenophobia and white nationalism, and it warns they could lead to acts of discrimination against the Mexican and Latino community. With or without papers, due to fear of this law, many undocumented people are being left stranded, activists say.
As I've said before, there's a lot of nervousness. Many guys have already left the state, they've fled the state. I'm a bit
What
scared.
does this new law entail? How it will affect undocumented immigrants and businesses that rely on this workforce? Proposals to regularize people who enter the United States illegally? Here's more context for you. To begin with, it's necessary to clarify that the Florida law is a state law and will not be applied. That means the law only applies in the state of Florida and not nationwide. Unlike a federal immigration law, this measure cannot itself regulate the entry and the exit of migrants to the United States. What the Florida law does is tighten controls to an unprecedented level, to make life harder for undocumented migrants.
I believe that what people really like is beyond anything. They feel fear and anguish because what we actually see is that the state of Florida relies heavily for immigrants.
To better understand the context of this state law, it's also worth noting that the United States has a unique stance on immigration issues. Not just because it's one of the countries that receives the most migrants year after year, not because it is where millions of undocumented people live and work. And unlike many European countries, for example, migrants who manage to enter the United States, well, ora inyo fast. They can buy a house, get a social security card, or a driver's license. Even without papers, this allows them to more easily integrate into the labor market. The United States thus obtains much of the workforce it needs. It is believed that the law has a strong electoral component for DeSantis. The governor aims to be the Republican candidate in the 2024 presidential elections and has made the fight against irregular immigration the cornerstone of their electoral campaign. For a long time, Republicans have accused Joe Biden's central government of not securing the country's borders. As part of his fight against the Biden administration, DeSantis says the law will serve to take action against illegal immigration. The law directly affects over 770,000 undocumented people and has a budget of $12 million to relocate immigrants from Florida to more migration-friendly states, where the so-called sanctuary cities are, aiming to better protect migrant populations. DeSantis has already sentenced dozens of migrants to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, a move considered by many as populist. The island where many celebrities spend their vacations has declared as a sanctuary during the era of Donald Trump in opposition to the former president's immigration policies. But the law includes several other specific measures that scare migrants more. Legislation requires companies with more than 25 employees to use E-Verify, a system for verifying the immigration status of workers. If companies hire an undocumented person, they might have to pay fines of $1,000 a day.
But what it is indeed creating is this confusion, distress. So there are people who do not know if this means they are going to lose their job. And there are also employers who, without having a clear understanding of what the law requires from them, they are now asking all their employees, provide your information to process it through the EBREA system.
Identification documents and driving licenses from other states are also invalidated, where it's not necessary to prove regular immigration status to get the license. But from now on, only a Florida ID will be valid. Hospitals will need to collect information on patients' immigration status. Notify the authorities. Activists warn of the effect of this measure and clarify its scope. Esta hora sonda sos.
This law only requires that people seeking health care, if they are asked about their immigration status, what we have there is, and we have already heard from some cases, well, that people, for fear of that question, do not seek that health care. But the real question is, do you have the right not to answer it? It doesn't mean your personal data will be taken. It only sends this information as statistics to the state.
And lastly, one of the most controversial and confusing points of the law: ban on transporting undocumented immigrants from other states to Florida. Doing so, drivers could be charged with human trafficking. There will be prison sentences of 5 to 15 years and fines of up to $10,000.
20% of Florida's population is made up of immigrants, so I think there won't be a family without family members who want to come visit, or if they want to leave the state to visit their families. If the driver is suspected, knowing this, it is bringing people who do not have documents to the state. They can be arrested for human trafficking.
The measure also affects people who go to work in other states and then return to Florida. Considering all this and the crucial role migrants play in agriculture, construction, or hospitality in Florida, how will this law affect the states and the country's economy?
Industry, agricultural, which is what we work with. We are not an agricultural workers organization. It is an industry worth $7.1 billion. And also we estimate that about half of the agricultural workers are undocumented. That actually represents a big loss for the industry.
Also because much of the workforce consists of seasonal workers.
A large part of the labor force coming to Florida works in vegetables, fruits, etc. It is recruited in other states. It is recruited in Texas, for example, and brought here temporarily by CIS. And that's already being affected.
Negative consequences will mainly affect Florida.
Their assumption is that the benefit is mostly going to be for the states where this legislation does not exist and also have significant agricultural industries. There is already this migration, and I think the economic impact on Florida is going to be, it can be hard. I don't think it will have such a dramatically significant impact on the North American economy, but it will on this state.
Many fear increased discriminatory treatment and stigmatization of the Latino community, even among those who have their papers in order.
The law affects all immigrants in the state because at the moment when someone identifies as an immigrant, enter into the power to question your legality. So that also creates problems for them subscribing.
On the other hand, some voices believe that the law, although very strict on paper, will not be enforced as harshly in practice, because that speech is mostly part of DeSantis' strategy to gain support. But very harsh measures would have too great an impact on the economy and labor market.
DeSantis seems to be trying to outroot the Pope in piety. He wants to out-Trump Trump. And in that sense, he can be what he is, did not anticipate, and we saw it, for example, in similar legislation in the state of Alabama. Florida is a highly labor-dependent economy, especially agribusinesses, no? from immigrant labor and labor, especially undocumented. So there are many people, including those from the private sector, who are already there, not raising the alarm yet, and who are going to start having a serious recruitment problem of employees, of workers for the field, and that could have a huge impact on Florida. So it's believed that effectively they are just laws on wet paper, that no one is really going to enforce these laws.
The truth is that the United States' immigration system has been collapsed for a long time because it cannot process the number of migrants it receives year after year, and because it has millions of undocumented people who are crucial to the country's economy. Many experts are calling for a reform to regularize these individuals. However, the high political polarization and the intense dispute between Republicans and Democrats have made it impossible to reach an agreement on reform for decades.